Hey guys, so let's just get back into this. After John and I got made it official, I ended up telling Adesanya. I said to him, I was like, listen, John and I finally made it official, so you kind of have to back off. And he was just like, okay, great, I understand. I hope you guys are happy. And that was pretty much it. And then I went, we have mutual friends in the lounge and stuff like that. John actually dated a girl in the lounge. Let's call her W. So W and I were kind of like getting close or whatever. And so I knew that he dated her in the past. So I went to her and I said, hey, I pulled her aside. I said, hey, listen, John and I made it official, and I just wanted to let you know that, face to face from my mouth, not hearing it from anybody else. And I hope that, it's fine and it's okay. And she was like, yeah, I'm great. I'm happy for you guys. I hope you guys are, happy. And we dated a long time ago. It was a mutual breakup, so it's not anything, no bad blood. I'm still friends with him. I'm glad that he found someone, and I hope you guys are happy. And I'm like, great. And sorry. And so I went and I'm like, are you sure? And she's like, yeah, I'm sure. And I'm like, okay, I just don't want you to think that, I'm like doing anything or like trying to fuck you over or whatever. That's not my intention, She's like, no. And then she's like, let me just tell you some like advice though, a little bit. Like, he wasn't the best boyfriend. I mean, and she was like, I wasn't the best boyfriend either. I wasn't the best girlfriend either, but he wasn't the best boyfriend. And, something that led to our breakup was that I didn't really open up and tell him little things that he did wrong or whatever, like something that I was mad at. I just brushed it off to the side or whatever. And I feel like that was like, that led to our downfall type thing. And I was like, oh, okay. And then she's like, also, I want to warn you about his family, because his family's kind of intense. And I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah, his mom is like real intense, like it's real crazy. And I was like, okay, thanks for the warning. Anyway, that went fine or whatever. And then Scott caught wind that we are dating, John and I, and he texted me. He was like, hey, I'm happy for you guys, but I just gotta warn you that, I kind of know both of his exes, and, they didn't say the best things about him as a boyfriend. And I'm like, first I was like, both of his exes? Weird. But I was like, oh, yeah? Like, what happened? And he was like, well, they say that he wasn't the best boyfriend. And then he was like, oh, yeah, they also said that they strung them along and things like that or whatever. Then I asked him, I'm like, 2 girlfriends, 2 exes? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I thought he only dated W. And he was like, well, yeah, he dated W, but he also dated Brittany. I'm like, Brittany? I did not know that. And he was like, yeah, they dated. And I was like, oh. And he's like, yeah, and she didn't have the best things to say about him. She said that he strung her along, and like she was like sorry, and he made her feel bad and things like that or whatever. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I'm just warning you because, I just want you to be happy, Vanessa. And, I hope the best for you guys. But I just want to let you know, I don't want you to just go into something and you didn't know these things. And I was like, thanks. I really appreciate it. And, I'll take that in consideration. And he was like, okay. Now, the next person to catch wind was Roger. And I'm like, oh, God. Like, he was not happy. He texted me. He was like, why him? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, oh, I thought we had a good thing going. Like, I didn't know, like, you were looking for somebody. What was going on? Like, all of this stuff. And I'm like, dude, like, you have a whole girlfriend. Like, what are you talking about? We were just fucking. Like, we weren't in a relationship. And he was like, oh, but we had a good thing going. Like, why you want to end this? Like, we didn't have to end these things and blah, 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 blah. And shit. And I'm just like, dude, you know, I picked who I picked. Like, we weren't, like, I'm not gonna be your side chick for the rest of my life. Like, no, you know. And he kind of like was like, ugh, whatever, type, brushed it off and stuff. And then the next thing was like, the people in the lounge just said a small comment that I still remember to this day. And it was just that they were like, oh, John has a type. And I remember a few people saying that. I was like, wow, it looks like John has a type. And it's because W is also a plus size girl, and I'm a plus size girl. And so it was like a jab at my weight. And I kind of didn't really like that. But, I mean, it wasn't anything serious or whatever. So, anyway, I went to John and I was just like, dude, have you seen all this backlash with us dating? Like, I can't believe there was so much backlash. And he was like, yeah, like, I can't believe it. And he was like, oh, Roger texted me. And I was like, what did he say? And he was like, oh, he just said, why, bro? And I'm just like, just ignore him. He's just butthurt. Like, and he's like, why is he butthurt? And I'm like, we had kind of had a relationship going. Like, we were kind of just messing around, fooling around or whatever. And he was like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah. So I was just like, ignore him. He's just being stupid or whatever. And John kind of laughed it off or whatever. So anyway, I went to him and I went to John. I was like, oh, by the way, like, you have 2 exes in the lounge? And he's like, 2? And I'm like, yeah, 2 exes. And he's like, what are you talking about? I only dated W. And I'm like, oh, well, I heard that you dated W and you dated Brittany. He was like, Brittany? And he was like, I didn't date her. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, oh, like, we like dated for like 2 weeks, not even. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, just that's crazy, that's annoying. Like, it was barely anything. And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, I'm not expecting like anything. So anyway, like a week later, I got a text message from Brittany. It's a long ass text message. And like, she was talking, she said like, oh, Vanessa, you know, I wish I would have known that you were trying to date John, and I didn't know, and you know, John and I dated and we were on again, off again, and you know, I didn't get any closure. And the last time we broke up, like when we broke up, you know, he was like, oh, you know, we're just taking a little break and stuff like that. So I didn't expect you guys to be dating, and I wish you would have told me, and I wish that, you know, you would have been open with me about it and shit like that. And I'm just like thinking to myself, like, didn't they date for 2 weeks? Like, why is she taking like they dated for 2 years? Like, it was something serious. Like, him and W dated for like 8 months. That's something that I can be like, okay, that is a serious like relationship, you know. But her, I was just like, what are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, I was just like, what is this going on? Like, what are you saying to me right now? But she just like kept going on and was saying like, oh yeah, like he was like, he made it seem like we were gonna be together, and he made it seem like we were gonna get back, and you know, he just needed a little break to like focus on school or something like that or whatever. And I'm just like, dude, like, you are, like, taking this, like, mad far. Like, I was saying this in my head. I'm like, what is going on, bro? But anyway, stay tuned for what happens in part 2. Peace.